Hi, I'm Micah Clark. Thank you for joining us today. I have a guest we've had on before, a good friend of mine, who former state senator John Ruckleshaus is with us today. John, it's great to have you on. You've got your pulse on politics in Indiana. I love hearing your perspective. You were a kind of rank and file Republican, and so you've got connections to local Republicans, Democrats, Indianapolis people. Thanks for coming on. Let's talk about the governor's race. Is that the big race probably for Indiana, but outside of the presidential race?
Oh, I think so, Micah. Thanks for having me. I always kind of laugh because you pick me because I won some elections and I've lost some elections.
Well,
and actually, you learn more when you lose an election than you ever do when you win an election. So it's those little bitty things that you go through that really hit home, and you can kind of see from afar now to 10,000-foot level. But yes, in answer to your question, everyone wants to focus on the national ticket, and seemingly Tip O'Neill always said that all politics is local, which he's correct. But what's happening in a lot of these races, all the way down to school board, is the national environment trickles down and kind of sets the mood or the political climate, if you will. And then it's hard for these local folks to kind of break out of that. But yes, I think the governor's race is probably the marquee race this year.
Well, we were talking in my office beforehand, and we were talking about enthusiasm. You were saying that once Joe Biden was out of the race, Democrat enthusiasm is up, which is making some of these races more competitive. Let me ask you a couple specific questions about the governor's race. I saw recently that there was a poll, and it was from the Democrat Governors Association, showing Jennifer McCormick very close to Braun. And within 3 points, I think. Now, I kind of question it. It was a small sample, high margin of error. But that race might be closer than, say, we thought 3 or 4 months ago.
Absolutely. And there's no question that what the McCormick campaign did is they probably got a favorable poll, right? But that was specific and purposeful because they wanted to use that then to shop the Democrat Governors Association. The way this works is you have the Democrat Governors Association and you have the Republican Governors Association that have these buckets of money, and they look for opportunities in the election cycle to play, if you will. They would love, Democrats would love to flip Indiana from a red state to obviously a blue state, and which it's not. But conversely, Republicans would do the same, right, in a Democrat state. So in doing that, yes, that's a typical ploy of candidates, is to have a favorable poll and then what we call shop it, and it's a credibility poll. So we would all question the numbers from a long-term perspective. Remember, polling is just a snapshot in time. But seemingly it's worked, and I think the Democrat Governors Association bit, and they have invested over $600,000 in the McCormick campaign. And yes, there's been some independent polling that shows that Braun is below 50%. And when you're below 50%, you're vulnerable. Doesn't mean you're totally vulnerable, but given the winds of change, it depends also on that pool of undecided voters. And in this case, I think it was between 10 and 11%, right, of undecided voters. Traditionally, the undecideds break 2 to 1 for the challenger. So that would be potentially in McCormick's favor, but that's not guaranteed.
So in this race, we have a unique factor. We have a somewhat viable third-party libertarian who ran before, got 11%. Polls show 5 to 8%, maybe, depending on the poll. Assess the libertarian in this race as far as how much is that going to play into this?
Oh, I think it's going to be significant because we have a unique libertarian in Donald Rainwater who, frankly, probably has more name ID than even Jennifer McCormick at this point, having been on the ballot now twice, maybe 3 times. I can't remember exactly. I think he's got some other history of running. And in 2020, he did very well. He did about 10, 11%. Traditionally, libertarian candidates are between 3 to 5% of the electorate in a traditional run-of-the-mill election, which this is not, right? So he, being Rainwater in 2020, I ran in that cycle because I remember this very well, is that he attracted a lot of the protest vote against then current Governor Eric Holcomb because of handling of COVID. So some folk are still comfortable there. Some people still want to blow the system up, right? He attracts a lot of them, a lot of protest vote. He'll get them because dissatisfaction with the two political parties. So I think the smoke clears. He's going to be in the 5 to 7% range, but he's taking disproportionately probably from Braun than he is McCormick.
Let me ask you about another name in this, maybe a couple questions on this person. Good friend of mine, someone you know well, Micah Beckwith. And now, whenever you have a social Christian conservative running, the Democrats want to, beat them over the head, make it all these wild claims. How's Micah doing in your opinion?
So I think he's doing okay. I think what will be interesting is if I was advising him, I would advise to make sure just to go to the rubber chicken circuit, go to the parades, shake hands, go door to door if you can, because I think Democrats, what we should expect down the stretch is Democrats to try to single him out.
Yes,
He's got a history via social media of a lot of statements, good or bad. And you can take any statement, any video you want and twist it any way you want, especially now. So I would fully expect Democrats down the stretch to look into his background and take whatever he said and explode it. So try to make him part of the election.
If they make him a boogeyman, does that play beyond the Democrat base? I know that's a tough question to ask because you don't have a crystal ball, but what do you think on that?
It could, and that's the risk. I remember coming out of this last convention, there was chatter about that. Remember that? You never know, right? Because again, if you're down to that 11%, and remember that 11%, and I kind of look back and who in the heck is undecided? I mean, we've been in an election cycle that's been going on for 16 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Who is undecided in America right now? But those 11%, again, if everybody's been focused at the national level, correct, and they haven't paid that much attention at the state level or the local level, and now they have to make a decision, and it's at 11%, they're worried about their daily lives, picking up the kids, going to soccer games, worrying about aging parents, outside of the political world. They're just not focused on this at all. And if all of a sudden in their minds is ingrained someone who is extreme, remember that's the word they always like to use, extreme, then they may be less confident of that.
Let me flip that on you, though. I sense that there's also a bit of a positive to Micah, which might be a negative with Braun. I think Micah's got a lot of enthusiasm from the base. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, very fair.
I know he's out there all over the place.
Yes. I think what's interesting in this dynamic is we talked about Donald Rainwater before, and those folks that have articulated and moved over to him in 2020. Again, I saw this at the doors and literally talked to people that this was their moniker and this was their ideology and thinking. Well, I think what Micah has done is bring a lot of those folks back home to the Republican, because they were Republican to begin with, and there's a lot of, it always has been synergies between the Republicans and Libertarians. Both believe in limited government, more individual responsibility. They may split on specific issues like marijuana, for example, but here I think that probably in the aggregate does help them.
So Braun has a campaign ad that I saw, a tagline, I should have looked it up. It was pretty powerful, but hopelessly liberal. That's it. I think she said. Do you think he'll stick with that theme?
Oh, I think so. Because when you think about it, both parties now is they want to paint meaning marketing, and tell the voters that the other opposite person is extreme, too liberal or too conservative. And vast majority of Americans are in the middle, center. America is either center right or center left. We kind of go through these election cycles, et cetera. I think overall America is more center right, especially on fiscal issues. Nobody's talking about the national debt right now, which is a shame. But yes, I think that's exactly right.
Well, let me ask you about one more race. And we know Jim Banks is running. I don't think that's pretty predictable. But the race for Attorney General, not a lot of focus. Todd Riccia has a lot of money, but he's running against also a candidate who's run before. Didn't do bad last time. What's your assessment between Wells and Riccia? What's happening there? Are you seeing much happening?
Yeah, the interesting thing I think there is that the Democrats are not putting the emphasis on Destiny Wells that perhaps 6 months ago we thought they would. Seems to me Democrats who have limited resources in this state have shifted over to Jennifer McCormick and have left Destiny Wells, not on her own per se, But knowing the poll numbers that Todd has been very strong in his base and is playing well with independents, I think he's in the 52, 54% in polling. So he's actually in good, safe territory.
Right.
So I think Democrats, obviously, that's not lost upon them. They've shifted their races and pushed all their chips in on the governor's race because they see an opportunity.
Are they making a play? We heard early on that they wanted to try and break the supermajority. The Democrats wanted to take out 5 House seats. Do you see much of a change in the General Assembly, the day after the election?
I don't. I think at the end of the day, we talked about at the beginning, yes, we have seen that enthusiasm gap different. We have seen that the Democrats have all come home now. When Biden stepped out and Harris came in, it was not so much pro-Harris as it was anti-Trump. So I think that was a gravitational pull there. Now what we're seeing is on the Republican side, still a very strong pro-Trump within the Republican Party, but there's a gap down there for the down ballot races. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of the advertising and marketing going out to Republicans to bring them home for the down ballot.
To boost enthusiasm down the ballot?
Correct, correct. So having said that, I think Democrats, yes, they would love to break the supermajority in the Indiana House, and they're focusing all their attention in the Hamilton County, Boone County area here, Dale Devon up north. I think at the end of the day, smoke clears. I think actually Republicans may even gain seats because I think all of those candidates will hold serve. They may be close, but they'll hold serve. But down in southern Indiana, Representative Rita Fleming, who retired, and now there's a Democrat interim representative, I think will pick up that seat as well.
Okay. Well, with the last few minutes we got, I know you got me, and later on you're going to. Looking ahead to the General Assembly, I'm hearing it's going to be a budget year. This is part of your bailiwick, I know. What do you think is going to happen? Is it all about the Medicaid problem? Is it going to be Braun's agenda if he wins, or McCormick's? There's going to be a lot of tension over the budget this coming session.
There is. This is going to be a very fascinating session because, number one, yes, you have basically a $500 million gap that the legislature is going to start out with, meaning they're potentially starting out $500 million in the hole. We'll see what the economic forecast is. We are now, as a state, totally dependent on our revenues. Nothing from the federal government's coming in. So we're on our own. So you've got that issue going on. You've got the issue property tax relief. There's a lot of talk, a lot of emphasis on that. Well, that's got a shifting of sands and dollars somewhere. You've got education savings account. There's a lot of discussion about that. Obviously, healthcare, which is my bailiwick, which I'm working on, is a huge issue. The last piece that really will be fascinating is the personal dynamic between the legislature, the new governor, Mike Braun, and Micah Beckwith, because now we're going to have potentially an activist more as a lieutenant governor than a lieutenant governor that's a team member of the governor. So this will be fascinating. My suspicion is the legislature will take the lead for the first couple of years as Braun is trying to get his shop in order because he's got to repopulate the agencies.
Yeah. I was thinking the other day, if Braun wins, he will be the first governor we've had who was a state legislator since Frank O'Bannon. But he was only in one term. Normally that would make him much more of an active player in the legislature. I'm not so sure this time because he's been in the Senate longer, U.S. Senate. It's been a while since he's been in the legislature. Certainly he has knowledge. But the legislature is always prone to say, hey, this is us, this is you. We'll do what we want to do. It's going to be, do you think there'll be a lot of conflict between the two, or do you think he's going to have a honeymoon period where they'll give him a lot of the things he wants?
It'll be a combination of all of them. Understand, I remember having this conversation with then my former colleague, Senator Victoria Spartans, when she was contemplating on running for Congress or staying in the Senate. The Indiana legislature, all legislative bodies, right or wrong, is a relationship-built business. You have to have relationships, and they're built through a long period of time. Yes, you could affect change. Yes, you can do some rather bold things. Mitch Daniels obviously proved that in a very quick fashion. But you have to have that relationship built. So Braun, even though he was there, I actually served with Representative Mike Braun, potentially Governor Mike Braun, But he wasn't in so much as a big player back then, if you will. So he's going to have to reestablish himself with that. And again, I think that's why that first 2-year period, the first half of his term, will be more about building those relationships working with the legislature, but the legislature really taking the lead in that first 2 years.
Now, the last question.
Sure.
If McCormick were to win, let's play that out. Is that almost instantly a totally dysfunctional branch in the sense that the legislature is going to stand up on their back heels and say, no, we're driving the agenda? I know the governor has certain powers above and beyond, but what would that look like if you?
It would be fascinating. I served in the minority. I served under Evan Bayh. I remember those days in the Indiana House. So basically, because we have one of the weakest governors in the country, it only takes a simple majority to override the governor's veto. So the legislature clearly would take the lead on all the issues that we just talked about, the Medicaid reform, the budget, education savings accounts, all those agenda items that are coming up. They'll take the lead. Clearly the governor will veto all of those, right? And then as a result of that, the legislature will override that. Where she'll have the influence is population of the agencies. And a lot of contributions that come in from vendors that want to do business with the state. So it'll be interesting. Therefore, going forward, the Democrat Party will be a serious fundraising machine.
Yeah, it will go from a regional city party to a statewide party again.
Absolutely, and a lot of patronage, a lot of jobs that come with that. I mean, we have about 26,000 employees in the state of Indiana. Wow. Not that the new governor is going to replace. Yeah, there's just a handful, honestly, probably a couple thousand.
Well, thank you. It's always good to see you and have you on. Last time we had you on, I got a lot of positive responses. I always like picking your brain, both in my office and on video. So appreciate you being with us, and it's good to see you again.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you. Well, thanks for joining us today. I hope that was helpful. We'll see what happens in a few weeks. Make sure you get out and vote. Do not assume any race is going to go one way or another, despite what John and I might think. You have the ultimate power. It's critical that you vote. I encourage you to go visit ivoterguide.com if you don't know where to vote or how to vote on certain races. I'll cover a lot of them. ivoterguide.com. But again, thank you for joining us. This is Micah Clark, American Family Association. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.